Good evening, Micronesia. Welcome to our studios here in Hagutnia. My name is Troy Torres with Candid News. Welcome to all of our friends, our viewers from Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, the rest of Micronesia. Those of you, as my grandma would say, back there, you know. She meant California, but I'm sure she meant like the rest of the states too, you know, like Hawaii, and Florida, you know, and all those places in between. Also to, dude. Also to all our viewers who are in theaters of war around the world. I've seen comments from Kuwait, Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa. I'm missing places. I'm very sorry, but thank you very much. Most of all for your service. But also for supporting us. We really appreciate that. After everything that you already do, that you tune in, it's quite an honor. Thank you so much. Tonight's show is dedicated to all the parents out there who take the time to do what's needed to talk to their kids, to keep them away from the monsters. Now, there's no magic bullet. You're not going to be able to catch it all the time. But the fact that you try, that you show your kids that you love them, it does more to break the silence when the silence needs to be broken than ever before. And unfortunately, we're seeing it these days. These past, I don't even know how long it's been already since the story on Paul Moffness broke. But since the story on Paul Moffness broke, more people are breaking their silence about all these different stories, coming forward about different people, different monsters in our community who've been taking advantage of kids. Bravo to those kids who stepped forward, to the parents who helped them to step forward, to the school officials who did something, to the witnesses who stepped forward and said enough is enough, because we're not going to tolerate bullshit on this island. Our first story deals with such bullshit, and it's rather heartbreaking. Now, news outlets have brought us the story of a JROTC instructor named Manjo Quintanilla from George Washington High School, who had access to and care of several hundred kids while he was an instructor over at GW. Since allegations of sexual misconduct rose about him, the Department of Education has placed him on or has transferred him over to the central office, according to Superintendent John Fernandez, away from kids. And it seems that more and more victims are coming forward. On November 30, 2018, last year, a young man, a GW student, who placed his trust in Manjo Quintanilla, and who was a member of the JROTC over at GW, he committed suicide. And it wasn't until March of this year, after his girlfriend committed suicide, after allegedly a suicide note was found in which she implicates Manjo Quintanilla, that we understand the nature of the November 30 suicide by this young boy and the suicide by his girlfriend, who allegedly was pregnant at the time of her death. And in this alleged note, this young woman implicates Manjo Quintanilla as being someone who sexually assaulted her. Whether she was pregnant with her baby, with his baby, is not known. That's not a clearly known fact right now. But we did ask Superintendent John Fernandez specifically about this case because it's rather disturbing. And In case filings in similar cases throughout the United States, sex abuse assailants like Manjo Quintaniza, like who have a story similar to Manjo Quintaniza's, where their victims commit suicide, well, those are treated as homicides because of the power that people like Manjo Quintaniza had over young women or young men, boys and girls. Let's play what the superintendent of education had to say about this and the urgency of the situation that the department treats this case with. Mr. Fernandez, thank you for your time. Are you aware or have you received a report of a student named who killed herself, and in her suicide note was talked about killing herself because she was in a relationship with Manjo Quintaniza, the JROTC teacher at GW High School, and she was pregnant?
I'm aware of some emails that have been going around providing information relative to that student. And so, again, we're in the middle of responding to a complaint that was filed, in April, late April, between an employee against a student. And I know that that employee has been reassigned while we've been investigating. As we've been investigating, we've been receiving, through interviews or through people who feel that they're willing to email and provide information. All of that has been coming through during the investigation. So I'm aware that there's been certain things that have been sent broadly to the media and to others, but they certainly do come to us. So as we go through the investigation, whenever we uncover anything that merits further exploration, inquiry, our first step is to try to make sure we make that contact with anybody who might be involved, witnesses, to establish the facts. So I am aware of that information, and it's definitely something that raises concern for us. But until we finish the investigation, we're not going to be able to really determine the facts.
How much concern does this raise for you guys?
Well, I'm a parent of a high school student, of a female, and my board chair is a parent of 5 children in the public school system. So from a parent standpoint, very alarming to just hear, right? To hear the allegations and to hear the speculation and to hear the concern and fear that other people in the school system, whether teachers, staff, students, are feeling. On the other hand, as superintendent, it's very important to also make sure that we do a proper investigation. Obviously, when there's an allegation, you don't automatically assume guilt. So it's important to go ahead and make sure you've established the facts. And that really comes to a very thorough process of interviewing people, getting written statements, connecting the dots, and to determine what is rumor, what is fact. And once we determine those facts, we can then feel better and more confident in taking the necessary actions.
Are there reports that GW Principal Linda Avila may not have reported this when she was supposed to report it?
I won't comment on the specifics, but I will say that as part of this investigation, and as we've unraveled trying the timelines and what's been alleged, we are looking at those processes and the school administration's handling of the matter. So that would include looking at the timelines for reporting and who received the reports and what the result is. So we're not yet at any conclusion. We're still incorporating that into the investigation. In addition to the employee being reassigned, we did temporarily reassign the principal as well, in order to make sure that the investigation could be conducted cleanly without any appearance of interference or so forth on behalf of the administration. So we're right in the middle of it. It's very sensitive, as you know. It's very alarming. I'm very concerned for the community because I know there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of things swirling around. But our commitment is to get to the bottom of it, to establish the facts, and to, within our authority, take the necessary actions to make sure that people know our campuses are safe, and that if people are on campus that make it unsafe, that they'll be held accountable.
Are the campuses safe?
I believe so. I mean, we have 41 campuses. We have 4,000 employees, as you know. And for the most part, I would say that, most of our teachers, staff, administrators have the best interests of our school children and their families at heart. But in an organization this big, we can't guarantee, even though we go through police checks and police clearances, court clearances, and so forth, we can't guarantee that there aren't any bad actors. We just do what we can to make sure that we take measures to prevent anything from happening. But most importantly, if something does happen or is alleged to have happened, we got to act right away to make sure we, ensure the immediate safety of anyone concerned, that we can create an environment where people feel free to report. I mean, that's the other thing about the good thing about this is that students felt comfortable approaching an adult and reporting, and then we just got to take our responsibility seriously and take care of it.
Is there a message that you want to give to students and parents who may know something or may themselves have been victims of either child abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse? Is there a message you want to give to them about this?
Well, we've had the experience of implementing the Lonnie Kate curriculum in our schools, right? And this is really to help our students, help our teachers teach students from at all grade levels the right way to protect themselves, to understand what these good touches, bad touches are, to be able to use the right terminology when reporting, because it's very important that we start in the classrooms if we're going to, get to this this issue of child sexual abuse in our community. And what we've seen is increased reporting. And we've seen, even though it's bad news in the community, it's almost on the flip side good news that kids feel better and more confident going to a counselor, going to a teacher, going to a nurse. So unfortunately, we've learned more about what's happening in our community. Doesn't mean it's increasing. It just means that we're hearing more about it, and that's the first step. So we plan to continue that, and we want all of our students to know that they should feel comfortable going to an adult on campus. If they don't feel comfortable with their teacher, the administrator, counselor, somebody that they trust, and that we expect that those employees will adequately and effectively report what they're learning. One of the interesting things that we're going to do, I think, try to figure out how to do next year, with this Lonnie K curriculum for the kids, one of our schools, the parents said, can you help teach us? Because we want to talk to our kids in the right ways, using the right terminology so they feel comfortable. Like if something happens at school, please tell your parents or tell someone at home. And so that's just an added layer of protection that we want to see if we can help implement, support these efforts.
And the last topic on this subject is, have there been any discussions have there been any discussions among your administrators and yourself, or with the school board, or especially with DOE's attorneys or the Attorney General's office, regarding any concern that this case involving Mr. Quintanilla or even Ms. Avila may have exposed the government of Guam to liability under the new civil statute on sex abuse?
Right, so we haven't really established or have those discussions. Right now we're kind of in the middle of the investigation, so we've got an allegation. I think we're fulfilling our responsibilities to, at least at our level, to, as soon as we found out about it, try to ensure that we allowed for provided for the immediate safety measures, both for the employees involved, because that's also the issue, making sure the employees, students, everyone are in a safe position in a way so we can conduct a clean investigation and get to the bottom of whatever is happening. So that's in all cases. We haven't really looked at it in that context. I'm sure that if we get to a place where we can close the investigation and look at our findings, that we'll look at that. I know I'm aware of the law in generally, but haven't looked at it in terms of this particular case because we're still in the middle of finding out. But that's worth a discussion. I do keep the board informed. Want to make sure that they're aware of alarming and concerning incidents. Again, we have tons of things that happen in our school system, right? The minor things that happen to major things. When it's a matter of serious concern, I bring it immediately to the board's attention because I know that they're going to want to know and provide some support when they can to getting this thing resolved and addressed.
Thank you, John.
All right.
I have
Oh, no, sorry. Sure.
the fact that they're both removed from the school, are they able to discuss it with each other? Are they, because they're on administrative leave, they go to this office, this main office,
Yes.
right? Are they together because of the investigation involving them, right? I'm not saying that they did it together, but that'll give them a chance to talk to one another about what he said, what she said, what she did, what he didn't do, Are they able to discuss this so that their stories match? So because the only thing that we're concerned is that these kids get help,
Right.
So
Generally speaking, anybody who is a subject of investigation or involved in an investigation are given instructions not to communicate with anybody, including from the school, at the school, involved in the incident. And then we're also aware of their presence here, making sure that that they're not in close proximity, without supervision of And that's just, I mean, and this again, even without presuming any guilt or innocence in an event, it's really to ensure that the investigation can proceed without anybody saying that something was done improperly or, allowed to be done irregularly. So this matter in particular, I mean, it's end of the school year. We're heading to the end of the school year. It's really unfortunate and kind of terrible to kind of have to face and hear these issues. But again, we all have our responsibilities to make sure we protect our kids. And so, just even as we can't say all the details, even as we can't say what the conclusions are, because again, we do give, even those these issues are alarming, we do address these things fairly, objectively, and neutrally. So it is going to depend on the facts. But once we get to the end of the end of the investigation, we'll take action as needed. And again, we can't say much, but I want to just assure you it is at the heightened levels of attention, concern, and discussion amongst folks who are involved to make sure that we come to the right, fair conclusion.
So the woman we're talking about, the school principal, her name is Linda Hernandez Avila. And she has been the principal of George Washington High School for the past couple of years. When she first became the principal at GW, my first thoughts, because I've been involved in executive offices of the government of Guam for a long time. And back in 2012, I was I led an effort called, under the governor's educational learning task force called it was a reform committee, and it was a committee to recommend changes on the reform of public education. And so we had to deal a lot with several school principals and with teachers, the Board of Education, really about a top-down look at governance and, more importantly, curriculum, and changing mindsets so that the mission of the public school system would be learning, and to achieve that mission, to focus every objective on instruction. And so back in 2012, one of the places where we visited to see what was going on in the school system was Ocean View Middle School. The principal at the time was Linda Hernandez Avila. I have, out of all the principals I'd ever met, I'd never met such a dumb fucking bitch in my life. Yeah. Linda Hernandez Avila, while we were asking her about matters of instructional leadership, what a school principal should be focused on, she was concerned about wet ceiling tiles, about 3 or 4 wet ceiling tiles in the Ocean View Middle School library, and how those posed safety threats to the students. And while safety threats are important, that happened to be her first priority as Ocean View Middle School principal. Her vocabulary was wanting for an improvement. And I wondered, how in the fuck an idiot like that was the principal of a school? Because she's stupid, she's dumb, has all her priorities wrong. Most of all, teachers are afraid of her, and wherever she goes, she creates a climate of fear in whatever organization she's in. She's a toxic leader. And then we find out that her husband is a man named Sal Avila, who's held multiple stints as a DOE Central Office Administrator. And the reason he's held multiple stints is because there's this scheme inside the Department of Education where you go into the classroom, you get as much pay as you can, then you become an administrator, and then you get a bump in pay. Then you go back to the classroom where you're at a higher level, and after some time, you go back to administration. And then when you're done with that scheme, you go up to the central office. And then you go back to the classroom, so that by the time Sal Avila had retired, he was, if not the highest paid, one of the top 3 highest paid teachers in the Department of Education for teaching 3 classes. Yeah, that was That was, and it isn't just Sal Avila, Linda Avila's husband, who also happened to get away with a lot of shit because he was Eddie Calvo's uncle. There are others, and they're all protected in a cabal at the Department of Education. The reason people like them are able to advance within the Department of Education is because they all belong to the same power base within that school. And a couple of these people are my friends. You know, I personally like them, but let me just call them out for their bullshit, because being careless with leadership decisions like this is what causes bullshit like what's happening at George Washington High School. So Rosie, Tainatongo, Ken Chargaloff, look at what your decisions have caused. Look at this. You could have at least chosen someone to support politically who had half of a goddamn brain. Yet you put your stock in Linda Hernandez Avila. Just idiot extraordinaire. So what we've learned here at Candid is that Linda Hernandez Avila may not have reported what she knew for months regarding this teacher. And that is why the superintendent of education placed her or removed her from George Washington High School. Now, all the facts of the investigation have not been made known to the public yet because the investigation is ongoing, but John Fernandez, as you heard in that interview with him, seemed to suggest that the administrative investigation will conclude soon, and that results of this investigation will be forwarded to the proper authorities, be that the Attorney General's office, the Guam Police Department, or Child Protective Services. But the urgency at which the department is taking this matter is cause for concern, not because they're not doing their job, but because so much wrong has been done in this case that the department is worried about it. That the department is worried about parents losing confidence in the ability of the public school system to protect their kids from monsters like Manjo Quintanilla, who was protected, allegedly, by Linda Hernandez Avila because they're drinking partners, and we have that from an extremely reliable source and an extremely high up position within the Department of Education. And that furthermore, former members of the Board of Education were protecting Linda Hernandez Avila. How much they knew, we're not certain, but we're sure the investigation will show how many bad apples there are in this, because just as bad as the monster who did this to several kids, and most of all, these two angels, boyfriend and girlfriend, who took their lives because they didn't feel they had any other way out because of this creep, this animal, this monster, disgusting. Disgusting. Just talk about the epitome of Calacus. Ugh. Fucking gross. Worse than those people are the ones who enabled them and covered their tracks, like Linda Hernandez Avila. I always knew that Linda Avila would find herself in jail one day, just because she's that stupid, you know? Because she liked to play power when she didn't even know how to spell the word. Well, I guess the day of reckoning has come for her. And it's too bad that it came this late so that these students at George Washington High School had to suffer through it. And this doesn't even include how many faculty members and staff have been under her gun, participating in this cover-up with her because she threatened them. Good luck to Superintendent John Fernandez and the investigators. Godspeed on their decisions. This cannot be an easy process. It must not be an easy thing to uncover something like this, to know that the students under your ward have been hurt in such a despicable way by such evil people. And go fuck yourself, Linda Avila. And most of all, Manjo Quintanilla. You guys are disgusting. You should rot in hell. So, we have more information, more people coming forward in the growing case of rapist AJ Balhaja. So we brought you the story about 4 people who, when they were boys, were raped by AJ Balhaja. We have a 5th person who is coming forward with a story of an attempted rape, an attempted physical and sexual assault in a public place. And the only reason it was stopped was because there was the realization that people were around. And then there are more allegations of a belligerent and violent AJ Balhaja, who uses his police badge to control people, to threaten people, and to hurt them, and then to cover it up. How much of this other police officers knew, we're not sure. We're trying to get to the bottom of that, but we also know that an administrative investigation is underway at the Guam Police Department, and that at least one of the survivors is preparing to file a criminal complaint against Officer AJ Balhaja. So here's the important part. Please understand that no matter how long ago the rape was, if you were raped by AJ Balhaja, or if you know someone who was raped by AJ Balhaja, so long as he was a Guam police officer while he raped you or while this rape occurred, or during his stint when he transferred his service from GPD over to the governor's office as a special assistant prior to his run for senator in 2016, or even after that when he went back to the police department, there's been no break in service, you can still charge him with official misconduct for that crime because the statute of limitations has not run out, not at all. And if you need help writing that criminal complaint, we'll be there for you. We'll help you to write it for you. Hell, we'll file it for you because nothing's more important than taking these monsters down. In the case of Mount Carmel School, actually, before I get to Mount Carmel, I do want to interrupt all of this bad stuff about monsters and show you a picture that one of our sources, one of our tipsters, sent to us, and it was taken a couple of days ago at the Guam Memorial Hospital ICU. Can we go to my screen? So that's a room in the ICU, or I'm sorry, in the maternity ward, and apparently, according to this tipster who took this picture, the air conditioning system at the maternity ward and the ICU is down. No one at GMH was answering our calls. To talk about this. But we do know that the hospital has requested I believe it's $185 million budget, of which some $197 million budget. I believe it's $192 million budget, of which $105 million of that budget would be paid for by the hospital's revenues, what they make when people pay their bills and insurance claims are paid and all that stuff. And they are requesting that the legislature pay for the remaining $87 million, or the balance of $87 million, so that they can function properly. It includes $30 million in capital improvement projects. I'm going to guess among them would be this air conditioning system that is unreliable and as of 2 days ago was down at GMH. But to have suffered in this heat, whoever was in the maternity ward or the ICU, I just don't know how safe those conditions are, to just have fans running in the heat and humidity that has been the past couple of weeks on this island. We can come off my screen now. We'll go back to the Mount Carmel story. So, on this Mount Carmel story, which is, I mean, it's just the conspiracy, the cover-up that won't get any smaller. And also where the Archdiocese just refuses to be held to account for its crimes. If you go to church this Sunday, in the interest of justice, and I say this very sincerely, I challenge you to ask your priest, ask the Archbishop if you see him, what in the world is going on with this Mount Carmel school case? Ask them for answers. Ask them for the truth. Ask them to be transparent with you as they preach to you about truth, justice, light, and the way, which the church will tell you are other names for Jesus Christ himself. Ask them what happened to that 12-year-old girl, what services were provided to them, to this girl. Why did this matter go, as far as anybody can tell, unreported, though the Archdiocese has said that they reported it? So an update on this Mount Carmel case is this. It's been 2 weeks, and the church still has not produced any verification whatsoever that the Archdiocese or Mount Carmel had reported this child rape to Child Protective Services and to the Guam Police Department. The only iota of truth to it is that it's something that we found out, that there was some sort of case that was filed at Child Protective Services. The origins of that case are there because they were not able to delete it from the database. It's just that there are no files, there are no documents in this file about this case. It's been deleted. Child Protective Services still hasn't responded to our request for information about this. They still have not confirmed anything. Meanwhile, we found out about parallels between this case and the other CSC case that has striking similarities to this, involving the disgraced Father Luis Camacho from the Agate Parish, and his pastor, his boss at the time, who still is the boss at the Agate Parish, Father Alberto Rodriguez, all members of the NEO. And then we found out that the parents of the girl are members of the NEO. We found out that Linda Rodriguez, who is the administrator of CPS and one of only 3 people within the division who had access to those files, the one who refuses to provide any information about this, also is a member of the NEO. The Archdiocese has said that as far as they know, no one was paid for their silence, and that no one signed any non-disclosure agreement in this case. Yet nobody is talking. Nobody is providing verified information to substantiate that they're telling the truth. And then there was a piece of the puzzle that we didn't bring you. Attorney Mike Phillips, who is the de facto leader of Mount Carmel School and the person whom we believe is behind this entire cover-up, the person who's been in communication with the Archbishop about this, and whom we believe is part of an orchestrated attempt to blame this entire thing, to scapegoat the soon-to-be former superintendent of Catholic schools, Richard Avila. Didn't work alone, no. And as parents of Mount Carmel School would know, or as maybe more importantly, the faculty and the administrators of Mount Carmel School would know, it isn't just attorney Mike Phillips calling the shots, but also a woman named Darlene Heighton. Why don't we post her pictures up so people can see who she is? Attorney Darlene Heighton is an attorney within the law firm of Phillips and Bordallo. She's also Mike Phillips's girlfriend. Let me tell you more about Darlene Heighton. Hold on. Let me get out my source information. So, Darlene, she was married to a firefighter when she started working at Phillips and Bordallo. Then she began having an affair with Mike Phillips and left her husband, and then Mike represented her, and they took everything from her ex-husband and have left him destitute with huge amounts of child support. Very Catholic of Darlene Heighton. And she is the de facto co-leader of the Harvard of Guam, a Catholic school called Mount Carmel. She began working at Phillips and Bordallo, and then after she got her huge load of cash from her ex-husband, leaving him poor, after all the work that he did, she then became anointed by former Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson, who at the time was not aware of the relationship between her and Mike Phillips, to be in charge of all of the procurement at the Port Authority of Guam, in the stead of the General Services Agency and under the leadership of Claudia Ekfaji, who for years has been demanding to have some oversight over the procurement affairs at the Port Authority because of the matters of accountability and responsibility that she was concerned about. Instead, that procurement authority went to Attorney Darlene Heighton. Over the past several years, one of the largest procurements and one of the most corrupt procurements involved a monthly $70,000 in billing to the law firm of Phillips and Bordallo. Not only is it the law firm that she's a part of, but it's also the law firm that her boyfriend owns, Attorney Mike Phillips. And together, all of that money that, this is just the scratching the surface of the scheming and the lying, the deception and the political connections involved that go straight to the doorstep of Mount Carmel School. It's just all a big fraud. These are the people, and I want you to know that these are the people who are behind this school, so that you understand that when you hear about all of these very dastardly things happening at Mount Carmel, well, you look at the character of the people who are behind it, and you can understand that, yeah, these kind of people would lie to Archbishop Michael Burns. They would pull the wool over Superintendent of Catholic Schools Richard Alvia's eyes. They would coach Tony Diaz, the Director of Communications, as to what to say because, he's going to trust them because they're lawyers. They are officers of the court. They will protect the interests of the archdiocese. But who is protecting the interests of those kids? Who's protecting the interests of the 12-year-old girl? Who is saying that the parents are wrong to not come forward? Because it certainly isn't the administration of Mount Carmel School, led by some very corrupt people. Sure isn't the Archdiocese of Agana, who either after being led astray or being complicit in the cover-up still aren't saying jack shit. Yeah. It's such a sad story all around. Well, that's really all for the night. That's like a lot, I know. There is a lot going on. There are more stories of other sexual predators out there. We figured this is a lot already. It's a Friday night. It's like a little too much reality for a Friday, But we had to bring this to you because it's what's going on. And you need to be informed so that you can make better decisions for your kids. Protect them. Keep them away from these monsters. Make the monsters go away. Help by speaking up. Break the silence so that these monsters are exposed and dealt with accordingly. And whatever accordingly means, I leave that up to society and to the law, and to society as well. So here's our dose of reality for a Friday night that's just a little too real. But try to have some fun. Be safe. It's raining. I saw Chip Guard. He said it's going to rain a little tomorrow as well. And that's all. So from our studios here in Agana, I'm Troy Torres. Thank you for joining us today, and good night.